Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to today's webinar. Great to have you all join. Just going to give it a few more seconds before we get started and let a few more people come in who I know are in the waiting room. So give it a few seconds and we'll be kicking off. Okay, great. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. It's brilliant to be here with you all. We're joined by friends and partners from across both sides of the Atlantic, which is super exciting. We brought together the absolute best in local government community engagement today. I'm looking forward to sharing some learnings with you from both Commonplace and from Zencity. As today's discussion progresses, just a bit of housekeeping. If you have some questions or some suggestions or thoughts, please do pop them into the Q&A. That's on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll do our best to address those towards the end of the session with you. So my name is Benji, and I'm the Managing Director of Commonplace. We're long established as the UK's leading community engagement platform. We work across local government and private sector real estate. I'd like to give a huge warm welcome to our local government UK client community on the webinar here today. We've got dozens of UK councils represented, and I'm really pleased to see you all and thank you for your partnership and loyalty over the years. Together we really have been pioneering community engagement in the built environment with you, ultimately improving decision making for neighbourhoods up and down the country. And I think that's a fantastic achievement that is important to stop and celebrate. So huge thanks. I've recently taken on the role of MD here at Commonplace after spending the past 5 years or so running our product and technology teams. So I've really enjoyed watching the partnership and the product flourish over these years, with all the suggestions from our clients incorporated as we build and develop the platform. Working with people all across the UK, from Walsall to Westminster, from Castleford to Camden, from Haringey to Huddersfield. Thank you. We put a huge amount of effort into developing the product and our focus to suit all of the various use cases that you come across in local government. So I'll start by setting the scene a little bit. We've just crossed a milestone around 10 days ago, which was that we reached our 10 millionth person in the UK contributing on the Commonplace platform. That is tremendous traction. It is traction. It's true traction. And it's been achieved by launching over 3,200 Commonplace websites in partnership with all of you. And that's a client community of over 150 councils in the UK. And you've joined us here today to hear about some of the different approaches that have been taken across the UK and the other side of the Atlantic as well. I'm super excited to introduce Eyal to you in a minute. Earlier this year, we joined forces with Zencity, and Commonplace and Zencity, we've been friends for well over 5 years, watching and admiring each other's growth and development in our respective markets. We saw a great opportunity to come together to bring what we're going to explain are really complementary products under one roof. So this is a really important moment, and I'm really glad that you could join us to hear more about it. And I'll invite Eyal, he's the co-founder and CEO of Zencity, to say a few introductory words about the offering and to talk about how we're setting the standard for community engagement globally. So Eyal, if you wouldn't mind doing a little intro of yourself and talking to us about the way in which you're working with councils across the US and around the world. What are the common themes that you're seeing over there in the US in particular?
Thank you, Benji. It's great to be here with everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us this afternoon. Well, morning for me, maybe. I'm based here in New York, in Brooklyn. But I'm very excited to have a chance to speak with this exclusive closed group of incredible Commonplace partners, because we've been incredibly excited about the work that you all have been doing. As Benji mentioned, there's been really meaningful milestones that were hit by the incredible work and engagement that are done by the various councils and organizations across the UK. And I'm incredibly humbled to have a chance to uh, bring our organizations together and today to share with you a little bit more about the trends that we're seeing both in the UK, in the US, and around the world, what brings them together, what combines them, and what are the things that separate them. So, by way of introduction, to build on what Benji shared, Zencity is a startup company that's been around for about almost 10 years, and we've uh, been very, very humbled to become the leading community engagement platform across the world. So we serve a little bit over 200 million people in over 400 organizations. Um, and I'd love to start by sharing a little bit of what are some of the commonalities that we've seen and some of the things that have brought together both the trends from Commonplace and Zencity before we start talking about some of the differences. So we'll go ahead and share the screen here for a minute to walk you through a few of these high level trends, and then we'll start digging in. Um, when we when we think about the things that we're seeing across the board, sorry about that. When we think about the things that we see across the board, again, building on our work in over 400 organizations, I think one of the most common things that are joined across all the councils that we work with, if we click one more slide in, um, is the notion of building trust. So the work of local councils is really, really, really important and meaningful. You all are in charge of the basic services that make up the life in local communities, whether it's housing and infrastructure and all of the basic capabilities that make up life in local communities. And what we hear again and again from our council partners across the world, in the US, in the UK, in Australia, in Israel, and Canada, wherever we work, is that building trust is a key consideration that is common. The reason is that without trust, local councils have a really hard time of delivering their services. When people don't trust their local council, they um, put sticks in the wheels of a lot of the services that we need to provide, and basically erode some of that basic capability. The common challenge that we see and that we hear again across the Atlantic is that trust is hard to win and easy to lose, and is on the decline. And we've done a lot of research to understand what is it that builds trust and how does that trust get built. And if we click one more slide in, we see that that trust gets built first and foremost by delivering on the expectations of residents. So when a council repeatedly meets their community in their expectations, when there is a sense that, you know, whether it's basic services like trash getting picked up on time, or potholes getting filled, all the way to meeting expectations on values and on changes in place. Um, that is what repeatedly we've seen in leading councils build trust with their community over time. But the last common challenge that I want to address before turning it back over to Benji to hear about some of um, the learnings from the UK is that understanding these needs is very, very complicated. So if we click one more slide in, we'll see that um, the tools that we see local councils put to use are tools that are oftentimes um, giving us a skewed view of community needs and priorities. One of the most commonly used tools is the famous public town hall meeting. And while those are really important for the human connection and are sometimes fun, we've seen again and again in the councils that we work with that these meetings are a very bad data collection tool. Research has shown that two-thirds of the people that show up to these meetings show up especially to protest against the topic that's being discussed in the meeting. And more than that, I'll say, oftentimes these meetings are limited to what one of our council CEOs calls the STP problem, the same 10 people that always show up to these community engagement forums. And that is not true just to town halls. Some of our gold standard tools to listen to the community, like phone surveys, have really seen a strong decline in usage. This data here from Pew Research, one of the most respectable survey research institutes in the US, has shown that response rates to surveys has dropped dramatically in the last 20 years and now is in the low single digits in terms of who's collaborating. So the challenges we've seen again and again is that there is a limit to the tools that are available to local councils in order to be able to really hear and understand the needs of their community so that they can act on that and build trust over time. And that is a shared challenge that we see really across the world, both that important need to build trust and the limitation of tools and capabilities. So not a unique problem to any of the councils here on the call today, something that we've seen again and again. And the challenge that it's is that it's not only missing the opportunity to hear from the public, it gives us a skewed view of public opinion, and if acted on, oftentimes erodes trust instead of building it. So, lastly, before I share it over to Benji, if we could one more slide in, um, um, the things that we've heard repeatedly from councils, and we've done extensive research on this, both specifically in the U.S. but across our global network, is that there's three things that councils prioritize when they're thinking about what would be effective engagement. One is how inclusive it is, or how much of a wide reach does our engagement process have? How many people are we hearing from? How many different diverse voices are we hearing from? Are we really being as inclusive as possible in hearing from the entire community that will be affected by this move? Second is timely. A lot of the decisions that councils need to make have a point in time moment. So can we get the right input and the right information in the time that we need it, and not take months and months to process it? And lastly, how can we get input that's actionable? How can we get data that can be quantified, that can be put to use, that could be show us a specific signal from the noise, and how to do that. And those are the common themes that we've heard again and again from the councils that we work with across the board. So I want to pause here for a minute, and I want to turn it back over to you, Benji. You mentioned before the one of the most exciting milestones that Commonplace has recently hit. You've engaged 10 million people, which is an incredible subset of the UK population. And to me, really brings to life this notion of inclusiveness, right? This notion that we are trying to hear from as many voices as possible in the communities that we serve. Um, Tell me a little bit about this. What do you see local councils in the UK engaging on? What are some of those areas of engagement in the UK?
Sure, there are typically around 4 or 5 areas where we see local authorities focusing their engagement. And I'm going to share a few examples so we can step forward, I think, a couple of slides in the deck. But in all cases that I'm going to walk through, they're really looking to understand what residents are thinking and how they're feeling. Starting with policy development. So at the region level or at the borough level or the citywide level, consulting on the current lived experience of people to help shape policy for leaseholders, policy for the nighttime economy, policy for school catchments, consultations on changing those policies, consultations on changing council tax, changing rubbish collection, huge topic in Birmingham right now with a huge problem with the city rubbish collection on strike, violence against women and girls, and developing policies around community safety. This example on the screen here is around Leeds city budget. So how should they spend their resources on an annual basis? And just put a few kind of stats and facts there on the screen to help bring it to life for you and others, Al. So, taking part in a budget in a budget consultation, there aren't too many councils where they've managed to bring in 1,700 responses to such a topic. And typically, as we were saying earlier, same 10 people, but we're reaching well beyond that. And 66% positivity is all about the sentiment people have towards that budget and the options that are presented to them. 22% of people objected to the idea of increasing council tax as a result of the engagement. So the vast majority of people, having gone through this engagement story, are supporting a rise in council tax, which is a phenomenal result for Leeds engagement. So that's the first kind of typical use case for us around policy development. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to talk a bit more about kind of strategic planning and one of our hot favorites, the local plan, which is such an increasingly important theme for local councils in the UK. Local plans, spatial plans, design codes, Reg 18, Reg 19. We see it time and time again throughout the life cycle of this sort of 5-year planning process. And we've done around 50 local plans in the past couple of years alone. This example we did with Lewisham, really nicely put together, great piece of work, attracted 16,000 people to come and take part. And that's a phenomenal penetration in terms of what you would historically have seen around local plans, and attracted over 3,000 responses so far, still going and still underway. So local plans really, really important. And if we step on one more slide, I'll talk a bit about the kind of more local. We're zooming in here onto specific developments or specific master plans or planning applications. So this is an example from the City of Stockton, a master plan for a site owned and being proposed for development by the council, and consulting the community at the pre-planning stage for this development, ahead of submitting a planning application for improving this place, this brownfield site. Again, 11,300 visitors, 1,300 responses, lots and lots of data that can be built into putting together a statement of community involvement, justifying the choices that are being made in developing that site and encouraging it to make its way all the way through planning. We've never seen a planning application that has used Commonplace at the pre-planning stage fail its planning application. That's a huge accolade, and that's because of the quality of the engagements and the quality of the storytelling and the data collection on the platform. And there's a couple more use cases here I just want to touch on. We can pop to the next slide, which is about transport. And transport's a really big topic for engagement. It kind of sprung out in COVID, but we've seen it very much continue around active travel, cycling, walking, wheeling, etc., around parking, around public transport, around changing junctions, around bus gates, bus reform, buses coming in under council ownership. I think we did the first engagements from Manchester around buses coming under council ownership there several years ago. And here you can see an example from Bristol, a huge scheme around active travel that's been implemented. They did an incredible job of engaging the community over multiple phases, really showing their ideas, asking for feedback, iterating, bringing back a new plan, asking for feedback, and using our community heat map tooling to do that. And the community heat map really brings these things to life. Phenomenal amount of response on this, 8,000 impassioned people coming to share their views and to support in the main what's being proposed by the council. So another really nice example. And then the final one's around housing. So on the next slide, an example here from Haringey. They have a Commonplace where they're showing all of the various estates on which they are currently engaging the community and planning work upcoming. So 26 different estates covered off, 25,000 visitors so far. It's very much a live engagement piece, and talking about everything. How does it feel to live here today? What do you want to say about our current standards, the current service you're receiving, around housing allocation, around regeneration planning, around ballots to support that regeneration, maybe even disruption through a construction phase, and then post-occupancy. We've done a lot of work with the Quality of Life Foundation on measuring the difference in the lived experience before and after a development happening. So, and that's a huge sort of social value data point for local government as well. So yeah, those are the examples I wanted to share and hopefully bring it to life a bit.
So I want to ask you a couple questions on that. I think it's really interesting to hear everything you're describing, and especially that last point about the quality of life. I think that this is to this common challenge that I've talked about before about building trust, and how that trust gets built by a cycle of meeting expectations and understanding the needs, meeting expectations. that measurement really proves out that theory, right? If we measure that the quality of life, the perceived quality of life has improved, shows that by listening to the needs before, we were able to build more trust and therefore improve quality of life over time. So that's really interesting to hear. But you talked about a few examples here, Benji, about about housing development and infrastructure development. And as we're here to talk about trends in community engagement, I want to ask you, what are some of the opportunities that you see right now for UK councils to engage the community? What are some of the leading topics that you see the councils that you work with either engaging on already or needing to engage or have opportunities to really understand needs so they can build stronger trust with their community?
Yeah, I mean, look, the number one story in the UK at the moment, and it's not particularly new, but there's a lot of change happening right now, is about the 1.5 million plus homes shortage. And I'm sure all of you on the call will be bored of hearing about that headline. But it is like our critical challenge right now. We have the new planning policy framework that's come out. There's a lot of focus around brownfield, around grey belt sites, and really trying to figure out how do we crack this problem, because we're nowhere near where we need to be. And we see this as actually like a real threshold milestone moment for community engagement, because as part of the NPPF, as part of this new framework and its associated impact on local plans, we're seeing the planning system becoming more streamlined. So what does that mean? It means that there's fewer discussions we're expecting about whether development should take place, if it should take place, and the discussions are becoming more about how. How should we develop this place? And that's really exciting for communities, really exciting for all of you in your roles in engaging communities in getting beyond the tick box consultation process of deciding or objecting to the concept of something happening, and instead engaging in the real discussion and solving real problems for local authorities. And with all of UK local authorities doing local plans going forwards, we've got mandatory housing targets. We've got presumption in favour of development. We're talking about stricter build-out timelines. We've got to go faster. Communities have less opportunity to kind of object and get in the way, and more opportunity to shape the development, to create places that they're going to enjoy living in and that you're going to enjoy serving them in as people working in local government. So it's a really critical moment for public input. Some of the other themes going on, there's a huge movement around devolution. We've got combined authorities being discussed right across the country. We have 3 or 4 devolution discussions happening on Commonplace right now. We're seeing those sprout up. They're really important. They're really disorientating for the people that work in local government, for the people that you all serve. And we're here to support that change and that ambition that you all have. So that's something that we're watching, and not everybody knows which way things are going to go at the moment, but in places like Surrey, where we've worked for many years, there's a lot of change, for example, in how Surrey might be configured in the future and what that means for the people that live there. Central government announced a new neighbourhood fund, and that's all about supporting communities that really, really need to step up. And we've done lots of work on levelling up and previous evolutions of this same work, as I believe you have, AL, around the Towns Fund in the past. So this is another area that we're really focused on, supporting communities to ensure that that money will be well spent. I've done lots of work on community grant processes, and we're super ready to support that change that's happening. Nighttime strategies. Most of the urban councils in the UK have been requested to focus on nighttime, to really come up with like a nighttime local plan, if you like. And just last week, we, together with Wandsworth Council, won the Pineapple Award for community engagement for the incredible work that they did with us on their nighttime strategy. They expanded it from Wandsworth to Richmond, and we're taking that forward with a number of other councils across the country. So that, really thinking about stuff that's hard. People don't want to talk about the nighttime, but we need to prioritize that, and we need to give people who work at night. We need to talk about violence against women and girls. We need to talk about community safety. and the antisocial behavior and the cohesion that happens when we get that right. So that's a big topic that's emerging, as well as infrastructure. So I remember when I joined Commonplace, our top websites were all about HS2, which is our new high-speed rail that's been controversial and is under construction. But just, since we joined forces back in January, I think Heathrow and Gatwick have both been sort of given the nudge that they're going to have a new runway, so you'll have more connections from New York. But that creates a whole set of multiplier effects. We've got the Cambridge-Oxford Arc, which is a huge investment in that region to bring more research, more homes, more industry, and more capital into the country. So lots and lots of change there. I think yesterday Universal Studios just got the go-ahead from Keir Starmer to locate in that region. So that's again going to create a whole load of development around there. But in all these cases, it's less about whether the change should happen, and it's more about how can we support that change to happen and make sure there's a great quality conversation about that change.
So that's a really good segue. I think it's interesting to hear all these perspectives because there's some commonalities to trends that we're seeing worldwide, right? Like housing shortages are a worldwide problem, and something that is definitely a trend that we see across across Europe. But there are some challenges here, or some issues that are very uniquely UK, like devolution of councils, which I think is extremely interesting. Another difference or trend that I see from everything you're sharing is um, maybe more commonality these days than it used to be, but the influence of national government on local councils. I think there's a lot more policies that have a direct impact in the UK than in other places. And I would used to say that in the US we see less of an impact, but these days the impact of the federal government on local government is extremely meaningful. Mostly in the way that the US works on that front is that the majority of the impact of local government is not necessarily in high level policy, but it is in funding. So a lot of the funding to local government comes through grants that come through central government, federal government in the U.S. context. And as if you've been following the news coming from this side of the Atlantic, there have been a lot of change and a lot of turmoil, and mostly a lot of uncertainty right now in government. So that's what we've been seeing as a leading source of let's say, anxious review from our local council partners on the U.S. side. But one of the last things you said, Benji, was that it's in a lot of these cases not an issue of will it get built or will this happen, but how will it happen and how we'll engage. And I think that that's exactly where we've seen trust be so important because sometimes these things can go smoothly and be a positive experience for community and again build trust and improve that quality of life. And if trust does not get built, we see that these things prolong and become cumbersome and could sometimes even take years and years. And I want to ask, we've talked about the fact that engaging more people and hearing from more voices is really really impactful here. Maybe my last question to you is tell me a little bit about how has Commonplace been reaching all these people? How are you engaging beyond the STPs and all the great examples that you've shared?
So, so it's a real strength of ours, something we're really proud of, and I'll just start with kind of how not to do it. So, historically, we've seen and heard and read about all, the kind of the face-to-face meetings as the main vehicle for getting traction with communities. Images of cucumber sandwiches and cups of tea in town halls and in community centres up and down the country. And fortunately, that's less often becoming the sole methodology now, which is really, really good to see. We see a lot of local authorities trying out online methods, but all too often that's taking the form of highly jargonistic, technocratically written surveys that are hard to understand. They're sent to a small selective audience, and eventually they end up as a tick box exercise, and the community, don't ever hear back about the contributions that they made. The work that we've been pioneering over the last 10 years with 150 local authorities is to really turn that on its head. So engagement, storytelling, and consultation, answering questions, go hand in hand. And we believe that telling stories and the sharing of information, the proposed changes, and explaining the trade-offs ultimately delivers a really a significantly higher quality of both engagement and communication. So two key rules. The first is, and we've proven time and time again, that the more context, the more storytelling that local authorities can do, the more support that they're going to get for the initiatives that are being proposed. We led some brownfield site research in Newham, Cambridge, Camden, and Manchester. And through that, we discovered that if the storytelling is really good, the community was prepared to accept buildings that are 5 times higher than if there was no storytelling. And that's because they've understood the trade-offs, and through the engagement, they've understood the increased benefit that the community is going to get in the form of community investment. And it's about, we call them survey stories. It's about telling that story. And if you can do that, you get a much higher support rate, which is critical to your objectives. That's the first piece. The second part is ultimately around reach and inclusivity, as you were saying. So, we've hit the 10 million people, and of all of those people, 67% of the people we've spoken to through the platform are supportive of the proposals that they've been shown. And that's really quite phenomenal as a statistics. It's over 2/3, it's 67%. And we've been really successful at getting inclusive and diverse audiences to the platform. On average, we get over 1,000 respondents on every single Commonplace, and 70% of those people are under 45. So the wider the audience, the more breadth you can get into your respondent community, the more support you're going to get for the initiatives, and that's where the dream comes together ultimately. And it's whether it's a local plan, Reg 18, Reg 19, working in levelling up funding, supporting changes in inactive travel, figuring out new council housing policies, doing some estate regeneration, redeveloping the public realm. In all those cases, it's important to do community engagement well, to build support, to build traction, to de-risk the latter stages of design and development, and ultimately to develop places where people feel more connected, feel like they belong, and places where they want to spend more time, places where they want to spend more money, ultimately. And as I mentioned earlier, we work a bit in the private sector as well. And that's really important because we have a lot of local government refer private sector developers to Commonplace. And we've seen that actually by engaging well up front, by reaching that diverse audience, you can drive up the number of show home viewings, you can drive up the number of house sales. So you're driving actual commercial performance as well as that connection and belonging. The same is true for local government. The more you engage, the more demand you'll see for inward investment, the more you'll drive that trust, the more you're going to get inward migration and growth for your region. And then you're going to get bigger budgets, better jobs, and a happier time at the end of the day as well. So, yeah, a little bit around our approach to matching inclusion and diversity to positivity and to support for your initiatives. So, yeah, that's our little story. And Eyal, when we were sort of thinking about joining forces together, one of the things I was most excited about was around the Zencity capability to reach even more people outside of the, say, official channels, and to make the data more actionable. So I'd love you to bring that to life for us as well.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting to hear the really specific UK context here, and the I've of course been very impressed with Commonplace's ability to reach all these people. I think one of the things that we've been really excited about is how can we supplement an incredible tool like Commonplace and the direct engagement with the community with more ways of hearing from the community more broadly. And I think that one of the statistics that I'm very excited about is that in 2024, we collected almost a billion data points from the people that we serve in the different communities. And our approach to hearing from the community and really opening up the lens and hearing from a wider set of the community is based on a few different capabilities. And I'd love to maybe share a screen for a minute and and show you some of those capabilities and talk about how they work. And what I want to emphasize is that now that our companies have joined forces, these are things that we can really put in the field in conjunction with the commonplace tools. And I'm really really excited to see, of you and I have seen some of the first examples of how it works together, and really make it pop. But let me um, uh, let's share the screen for a minute, and we can talk through some of those tools and capabilities. So one of the things that I want to emphasize is that online presents a really unique opportunity. You talked about this a little bit, Benji, before, and you've mentioned that um, we've moved beyond the town hall meeting in a lot of cases in the UK, but online presents a really, really, really big opportunity overall to hear from the community. One great way to do that is through direct engagement with a platform like Commonplace, but there are other ways in which we can listen to the community. So Zencity's approach to engagement overall is to combine a lot of different ways to gather input into one platform and make sense out of it. And we leverage a few other online capabilities to do that. One tool that is very meaningful and important, if we click a couple of clicks in, um, is sorry, if you can go back. Okay, thanks. So this is an overview of our platform overall, and basically, as I mentioned, we combine a few different ways to listen to the public into one platform, and then we use a lot of. We have to mention the most important buzzword of the minute, which is AI. We use a lot of AI to make sense out of all that information that's being collected and translated into the workflows of local councils directly. So um, while digital engagement is a big part of this, as we've been discussing, I want to highlight the three other input collection capabilities that we've put together: online sentiment analysis, what we call Zencity Organic, our ability to run representative scientific surveys with a different methodology, and our experience survey capability. So, in a nutshell, sentiment analysis, the ability to collect the conversations that are happening online and make sense out of them on Facebook and X and Reddit and wherever. Community surveys allows us to survey the population in a scientific manner much more quickly and effectively than some of the traditional surveys that we know. And experience surveys allow us to engage people that just received the service from the city, from the council, and measure that experience. So if we click one more in, let's dive into each one of them and how they bring to life engagement. So as mentioned, everybody is online, and that presents a really exciting opportunity. In the US, more than 95% of the population is regularly active online. Doesn't mean they have the newest iPhone or that they have home. Digital divide is real, but everybody's doing something online. They might be playing Candy Crush. They might be reading the Bible app. They might be looking for the latest Premier League results. But they're doing something online, and in the classic form of engagement, we need to meet people where they are. In a lot of senses, that's where they are, and I think that's what's been also helpful in Commonplace. We've seen this both across the UK and the US. So let's look at some of these other capabilities and see how they work. So one more click in. Um, the first tool that I want to share is what we call Zencity Organic. So this is the first tool that we've rolled out that we developed, and what this basically does is capture all of the online sentiment that is out there. So I want to highlight, when you think about a council that has a population of even 50 or 60,000, and definitely there's 100 or 200,000, there's a lot of feedback and input that's being shared by people online on a regular basis. People are posting photos of themselves in local parks and open spaces. People are talking about being stuck in traffic. People are commenting on policies and announcements that are coming from the city. People are talking about their desires and aspirations. There's a strong wealth of information in all that data. And today, a lot of councils look at it sporadically. They look at some posts here, some posts there, read through the comments, and have a very qualitative view of that. We believe that there's a really exciting opportunity, and we've seen that in action, to turn a quantitative approach to this and to really aggregate all the information that's out there and create a signal out of the noise. So basically, what organic does is we cast a wide net, we pick up all of the social media conversation, and that includes Nextdoor, it includes Facebook, it includes X, it includes Instagram, it includes wherever people, Blue Sky, wherever people might be talking, and we bring it all into one place. We filter it just to keep the data that's relevant to the work of the council. So not every time, uh, you know, when somebody says Liverpool, they could be talking about the council, but they could be talking about the football team as well. So we are able to filter out only the things that are relevant to the council, and then we use a lot of AI to make sense of it. What is the category that's being discussed? What's the sentiment? And what's the change over time? And that provides really unique views of sentiment. Another tool that I want to highlight, if we click one more in, is our survey capability. Um, so I'm sure a lot of the councils here have run surveys in the past. Surveys are usually both a cumbersome process. It takes a few months to run the survey, build the questions, get results, analyze them. And in a lot of cases, the traditional surveys, as we've seen before, have a hard time to really reach the entire community that we need to reach. For example, young people, 18 to 34s, are pretty hard to reach. For example, people who don't speak English as a first language tend to be very hard to reach. People who don't trust government won't necessarily reply to a survey that has the council logo on it. Um, we've built technology that allows us to reach the same scientific rigor and even better, but takes a different approach to where we collect responses from. So basically, our surveys um, recruit all of the respondents online by buying ads in a smart and effective way. So wherever somebody's spending time online, they will see an ad, and those ads have strong targeting capabilities. So we buy these ads on a massive scale in a smart way in order to reach hundreds of thousands of people immediately with our surveys and collect a representative sample. So not just collect whoever wants to answer, but collect enough responses from each and every demographic and geographic, ethnic, gender, age group that we need to hit in order to create a representative sample of the community. And what this allows us to do is a much faster turnaround than traditional surveys, reach a lot of people that usually are not easy to reach with surveys, like 18 to 34-year-olds that are scrolling through social media answer our surveys at a much higher rate than traditional surveys. We can target people, for example, in their own language by showing them a survey according to the language their device is set to. So basically, reach a much more inclusive audience. And I can tell you, Betty, we've done this in the UK as well, not just in the US. We, for example, have worked with the formerly known as the Department of Leveling Up, now MHCLG, and have surveyed nationally, and we're able to get representative samples around the policy for the local plans for towns. And we've had a lot of other experiences in all London boroughs and in a lot of other places to run these surveys. So we're very, very confident about this capability. We collected literally millions and millions of survey responses last year. And the last tool that I want to highlight is our experience survey module, which is um, might be the most rudimentary out of the bunch, but I think is another important way to hear and get feedback from the community, which is our ability to integrate into a city service, a council service, and ping people with a text message or an email right after and ask them how that specific experience was, whether it's a permit or any service, whether it's reporting something, an issue or a problem to council. We can ask how that experience was and give a score and a measurement. And I think the most exciting piece of all this is, so we hear from a lot more voices through organic, through the surveys, through the experience surveys. We can bring all that in together now, together with the input from Commonplace, and create a very holistic 360 view of community feedback on these different issues.
So exciting to bring that to life for us. Thanks, Hayal, and such a great complement to the Commonplace existing functionality. And I think imagining a dashboard that brings all of those things together and the ability to analyze all that data in one place, get a 360 view of the whole community. I think that's ultimately what brought us together, which is really important to call out. Just curious to know, I shared the kind of UK use cases earlier. Are they the same in the US and in terms of the way this product is being used? Can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the interesting thing to note here is that there are some strong similarities. Like, um, housing, like infrastructure, like the nighttime strategies. Like there's a lot of use cases that are similar. There's also some use cases that are different. For example, in the U.S., local councils administer all the public safety services. So all local councils have police departments, even if they're tiny, and a few others. But let me give you a few examples of ways in which we've seen these tools come to life on this side of the Atlantic. If we can share the screen back. So one of the first examples that I want to show you is from Los Angeles. One of the It's the second largest city in the U.S. It's a little bit over 4 million people, and one of the exciting ways in which we've seen them use this is really to use the survey data that we collect for performance management. Because we're able to reach a very, very, very trustworthy scientific sample, and because we're able to do this very fast and very cost effectively, we are able to start looking at resident sentiment as a clear performance measure. So something we can really track month over month or quarter over quarter. In this case, as part of our public safety work with the city of LA, we run a monthly survey of resident perception about the services of public safety, about how safe do they feel, and about trust in police. And one of the things that I was really excited to see, because we get this sample, broken down to a neighborhood level, to any demographic level on a month by month basis, this has become the leading performance indicator of the city when it comes to public safety. So they have a monthly performance meeting where it used to be all about number of arrests and number of calls to 911, to the emergency hotline, and now the meeting starts with, has sense of safety improved as much as we expected? Has trust in police improved as much as we expected? And not only is it used in the internal meetings, as we can see here in the picture to the left, we also have a live dashboard that creates accountability back to the community and shares all that information out and shows how the police department is performing in the eyes of public sentiment. So that's one example. Another example of performance management, if we click when we're in, from a smaller council, city of about 120,000 people in Texas with the lovely name Sugarland. They've been running quarterly surveys with us to measure their performance across all city services, from things as big as rubbish pickup and public safety, all the way to things like quality of public art. And one of the things that they've seen in their surveys is that this is a service that is really important to council, but people were fairly negative about it. Only 50% of the community has shown positive sentiment, which in a community like Sugarland, which is a very high quality community, is a relatively low score. And the council, because of that, wanted to do something about it. And what is exciting is, because our surveys analyze all of the comments with AI, we were able to understand the nuance, what would drive more satisfaction here. 65% of respondents said they would be interested in more small and localized experiences that celebrate the unique local culture of this council. And based on that information, the council shifted focus and started doing a lot more local events, both events, murals, more and more. And what was exciting is that they were able to measure and see that change over time by seeing an increase in their survey scores, seeing a big increase in their social media engagement and positive sentiment, and so on and so forth. So those are a couple of examples of how this is really used for performance management. But I want to highlight also, if we click one more in, how these tools could be used for for other cases, for example, like budget allocation. So this is from a small council of about 50,000 people in Illinois, and what the council had to do here is that they got a really big federal grant, a really big national government grant, and they were looking at how to use that money most effectively. So instead of deciding in the council chambers alone, they went out to their community and surveyed, out of the different options that the council wanted to invest in, what would be most impactful and most important. And what's interesting about this example, other than the fact that they got really high quality data, and as you can see, a real ranking on what's important to the community, because these surveys are scientific and they were able to count on the representation of each group, they actually ended up looking at specific underserved communities, Black and Brown communities in this case, and what were their priorities, and used that prioritization in order to allocate the funding in this case. So another example that we can see is when we have this high quality in-depth data, we can use it to make big decisions like budget allocation. If we click one more in, maybe the last couple of examples that I want to share are going beyond this notion of performance management and into how we close the loop and communicate back to the community. So I'm sure we've all dealt with misinformation and with things that are driving public opinion or sentiment that are just not true. In a town called Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is a town of about 40,000 people, 35,000 people, sorry. Um, the council saw that there was or the council dealt with a unique problem where there was an online threat to the school that led to a lockdown. Those things happen. That's probably the negative side of the uniqueness of the U.S., I would say. But that immediately sparked a lot of misinformation about what was happening and a lot of resident frustration to a lack of updates from official sources. We highlight that to them immediately, automatically through Zencity Organic, and the city was able to take action and immediately engage that in misinformation, debunk it, put out official messaging, and they were able to track in our platform to see how that information percolated and how it was changing sentiment and conversation. So that's one example, and the last example I want to share on this maybe is from the city of Philadelphia. That's a city of about 1.7 million people. Um, and uh, Most of you probably know it. The city has a public health department, and if I take us all back to COVID for a minute, was running a vaccination campaign. And I want to highlight this example not because of the vaccination input, but because it was really interesting. Um, One of the things that the city needed to do as part of the vaccine effort was to publish a campaign that was a vaccine incentive. So basically, a lottery where people could get money for getting the vaccine. And when the city published this campaign, they got a ton of negative sentiment. As you can see, 18% of the conversation was negative and only 3% was positive. And what was interesting is that we could highlight from the rich data and organic not only, hey, people are negative about this, which was a surprise in and of itself, but why are people negative about this? What's driving the negativity? And what we could see in all these examples is that a lot of them were saying that this is a bribe and this is a payoff, and why do we need to bribe people to get vaccinated? The city did not expect that, and our ability to highlight that led them to immediately take down the campaign, upload a different campaign, and mind you, same policy, didn't change anything about the policy itself, just a different messaging and campaign. And that campaign, as you can see here in the data, showed a much more positive sentiment, a much lower negative sentiment, and eventually led to a much higher vaccination rate because of that messaging. So the ability to monitor the messaging here and reshape it allowed to build more trust with the community and get better results just by changing the messaging around something and not changing the policy itself. So these are some of the examples, and maybe the last one that I'll share before we leave some time for Q&A is if we click one last slide in, um, is from a city called Lake Stevens in Washington, small community of about 35,000. And they're really a city that uses all of these tools that we've talked about in conjunction. And what I wanted to highlight here is that in their community survey, one of the things that they saw is that residents feel like they're not getting enough information from their city and that they're not hearing enough official updates from their city. And they want to get more of that. And based on that, the city took action and changed their communication strategy, started being much more active on social media, started communicating a lot more, and they were able to measure and see what works on their social sentiment piece and see that they're getting higher and higher positive sentiment. And the nice way to close the loop is that in the next survey cycle, 6 months after, they were able to see a 7% increase in all of their overall quality of life metrics and about a 20% increase in their satisfaction with communications because of the action they were taking. So they were able to recognize that there were a problem, take action, use organic to track that action on a tactical level, and then use surveys again to see the results of everything they're doing. So bottom line, we see that there's some cases that the use cases are similar to the use cases, some cases that are the use cases are different, but the essence of being able to use community input to measure performance, to understand communication and shape it, and to really hear from as many voices as possible is very, very common between the US and the UK. And this all came to life as well in our work with the Department of Leveling Up, MHCLG, where we ran a national survey around antisocial behavior and what was driving antisocial behavior. And we were able to really, really shape the agency's policy around that by having quality data on each and every region across the UK.
Fantastic. Some brilliant use cases there. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can get into all these unofficial channels and regular surveys in the UK. We've got some great conversations happening with our existing clients. So thank you to those of you who have been starting those discussions with us. I'm going to do a little sum up in a moment, but just to check in around some questions that have come in. There's a couple here that I think we can address quite quickly. Al, can you talk a bit about what social networks are covered by Zencity Organic?
Sure. So we cover all social networks that you expect: Facebook, Twitter, or X, mind you, Instagram, and so on and so forth. And one of the unique things that we also cover is Nextdoor, which is has its share of advantages and challenges, but overall is a great source of quality information. We're one of the only ones that have access to because of our focus on work with government.
I think Nextdoor is a critical network to be plugged in here
Mm-hmm.
in the UK. And there's another question here around data protection. Now that we're a UK US company, which I can address here. So for those of you working with Commonplace, all the data that you collect today, all that data remains as is in the UK. And where relevant, any other data that you're collecting through Zencity that is personally identifiable will be managed in a fully GDPR compliant way. That's all set up, as Al said, already working with MHCLG, Met Police, British Transport Police, a number of local authorities around the UK, including Hertsmere and Tewkesbury, North Staff. So we're very comfortable with all of those challenges posed by data protection. Take it really seriously. Commonplace is an ISO 27001 certified business. So look forward to maintaining those standards. And that really brings me to sum up, which is, what we've been talking about here is setting the standard for community engagement. Lots of commonalities across the UK and the US, some differences, but ultimately we want to get beyond the same 10 people. We want to drive inclusive understanding of the community. We want to work through solutions that bring the insights to you in real time and that enable you to compare that data over time in super easy, ready to go dashboards. So it's all about making that data time specific. And finally, ensuring that the insights that you get are really, really actionable from the data that you've collected. So that's really what we wanted to share with you today, and hopefully you got a flavor of it. We're excited to pick up with you and continue the conversation. So thanks, Al, for joining, particularly early morning your time, and looking forward to further collaborations.
Thank you, Benji, and thank you everybody for joining us today. And I just want to say we're extremely committed to support our all of the Commonplace customers and our new UK partners. And if there's anything that we can do to help you hear from the community, any other ways that we can help cross bridges across the Atlantic, or any other way we can support you, please, we would be very, very excited about it and appreciate the opportunity to support you all in your important work. Thank you, Benji, and thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.